winter project here. Thought I'd just do a little videotape action. My Bengals just won. Woo, we clinched the playoff berth. Kind of digging that. But this winter, got a little, things going on here. Got the ankle. Got a little revamp on that thing. And going to put a big bore kit into my 103 2014 Harley Ultra. One of the things that I'm going to add along the way is I believe my primary tension deal's going out, and I'm going to add one of those to it, the mix as well, since I got the bike kind of torn down. At this point, just breaking down the bike. I'm far from a professional. I'm a novice, but I love turning a wrench, and I love particularly turning a wrench on my own bike. So there's the coming in at the bike. You can see where I am so far. I'm working on the exhaust, and my friend lent me this nice little lift, so that's going to be very helpful in the interim for sure. It's minus 9 degrees outside, and like I said, I'm just taking off this exhaust here, so I thought I'd go ahead and videotape a little bit of that. So there's the cross pipe. That guy's coming out. Oh, I'm focused on the rear exhaust, taking the manifold off. It's a pretty straight shot. I had to take these guys out, so pretty simple. And on the front, as I said, it's a little more difficult. So I found this little wrench is gonna fit in there better than the big 1/2 inch I was using on the back. So one of the things that I've experienced in taking the exhaust off is it's easy to lose these nuts, and it's a booger to put them back on. So, you just got to be patient. If you hear a clink or a drop, finding that is just a bear. In some instances, it's probably good to put a towel underneath here to catch anything you do. Now that I got the manifold gaskets released on the front and the back, now I just got to take off our one support nut here and take out the heat sensors, and basically this thing's ready to come out. I'll go ahead and work on this nut. I think it's a 5/8 if I remember correctly. It's up underneath here. Get the one nut out, One nice little handy tool I found is always having a little magnetic doohickey here to help pull some nuts out and things like that. But I was able to break that loose, and now we're on to the heat sensors. There's 2 of them. There's a top one and a bottom one. I'll go ahead and unscrew those, and I just use a little 9/16 wrench for that. So there you have it. We got the exhaust off. It just pulls off these flanges that later will go on. You can see these are the heat sensors I was referring to with the 9/16. I marked the bottom one with a B. I'm going to take off the gas tank, and I'm going to go ahead and take out the battery. Not too big of a deal. Basically, you just want to take out these lines, pull them out. They follow all the way down here. It's not a big to-do. We're going to release the coupling down here on the fuel. Here it is. Actually, I could probably just do that right now. Just kind of lift up on that sucker. I got the gas tank off, so as I said, it was just a matter of removing this one on both sides. And then there were a couple of nuts here and a couple of nuts here, and those came out easy enough. And of course, you saw me release the gas coupling before, so after that, it was just lift it off and put it on the shelf over there. I got the battery out, which is good, right? Here's, where the battery went. Next, I guess, is the horn. I'm going to be replacing the jugs and whatnot, so the horn's got to come off. So that'll be one of my next projects. I'm going to take that sucker off. I got the horn off, no problem. Everything's groovy. We're moving right along on taking down the bike here. One other thing, I've got these heat shields on here. These are awesome. They're so awesome in the summer. They came standard, I think, on the Ultra Classic. That's what this is. It's just a couple of 7/16 nuts underneath there, one there and then one up there. I'm gonna have to remove them for sure because it's gonna inhibit me from taking off the heads and the rockers and whatnot. So just take a few minutes, pop these suckers out, and we're on to the next step. Gonna take off the air cleaner here and the throttle body. It's gonna take a little while. I put on this custom air filter. My buddy Neil stopped over. Say, hey, Hey, Neil.
Hey, Neil.
I got the air filter off the throttle body, so just got to get the actual throttle body itself off. Just take off a few plugs here, a few other plugs here, and then we're going to get in the likes of the actual throttle body. Has a couple of Allen wrench bolts that go into the heads back here. There's one on each side. And then that thing should slide out. So once we make, hey, we got the throttle body out. So there you go. There you have it. You know, just had to get in there with a couple Allen wrenches and take them off the heads. And you know, I'm kind of thinking at this point, I'm going to probably get the heads ported. All right. Hey, we're still waiting on the parts for the top end of doing the jugs and whatnot in the stage 3. But thought we would go ahead and change the primary tensioner. So took off the tensioner, or rather the primary case. You can see in there, and right here's the actual Harley tensioner. You know, it's kind of a spring actuated kind of thing. You can see the way the tension is on the chain. So we're gonna go ahead and throw in more of a performance tensioner in there that's gonna at least tighten things up. I really downshift quite a bit, and I don't know how good that is on a Harley, but like I said, I got 70,000 miles on this thing, and I ride it hard, so I thought I'd go ahead and take care of that. So we're going to throw that thing in there and put the new gasket on, and there's this actual bolt pattern we'll have to take care of to set it up, but we'll go ahead and take care of that. I put in Drag Specialties primary chain adjuster, and here's the unit right here. One thing to note, it didn't come with instructions, so I had to actually put in the adjusting pin, which is right here, okay? It's this pin here. And note to yourself, it's important that that pin come out. So it's just used to actually push the block over to adjust it. I did find some instructions online, and the reason I have this copper pipe in here is really just a straight line from one of the, you know, the primary over to the clutch basket. And the idea is to measure the distance between the top of that chain and there as you put a little pressure on it. When the motor's cold, which obviously it is, you're going to want around 3/8 to 5/8, or 5/8 to 7/8 is the spec. When it's warm, it's 3/8 to 5/8. So I've set the spec with regards to the pin. I've used the pin to move this over. Now I'm going to remove the pin, and once I remove the pin, I'll actually secure these locking nuts. These have slightly small little tabs down here that you fold over to actually lock them in place. So you know, just some little tips about it. Not too big of a deal, but thought I'd include those details. Thanks. One other note I didn't include in that is that I used a jack here to jack up the back end tire, as you can see. And the reason being is I've got this thing in 6th gear. I probably should remove the spark plugs to make it a little easier because of the compression. I will when I actually get to the cam bearings. But by rolling the tire forward, it's gonna actually change the tension. As you can see, if I roll it backwards, it's gonna change it there, and then I roll it forward. So you wanna do it rolling forward so that it tightens everything so that you get a proper measurement. All right, so just another tip with that. By the way, with regards to that old chain tensioner I took out, here it is. You can see relative to this, there's some pretty serious grooves in here, so it's good I replaced it. I mean, it was still intact and functional, but yeah, there was still definitely some wear on that thing. So, you know, this bike, like I said, I'm pushing 70,000 miles on it, but it's not a bad thing to go ahead and replace. Time to throw the gasket back on. I did take the adjusting pin out. One note, this is a huge deal. It's one of these little ball Allen wrenches, so it's really easy to get in there with the drill or whatnot. Otherwise, you're gonna kind of spend a month of Sundays, you know, turning an Allen wrench in there. And I've got the cover back on for the primary chain. There's actually a sequence for putting these bolts back in, by the way. You're gonna go from here, it's gonna be 1, and everything's across. So it's 1, then it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then you're gonna come back here, and you're gonna hit this is 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. At the end of it, then you're gonna torque these suckers down in the same pattern. Use your torque wrench and tighten those down. I did use some blue Loctite on putting all those back in. Just another tip here. I tried the 21 foot-pound torque like the spec was calling for, and honestly, I felt like I was gonna put these things a lot tighter than they were when I took it off. I decided to use my drill and put it on a higher torque, and I went around and basically I just go until each nut has the same amount of torque on it. Last thing I want to do is break off one of these nuts in here by going with 21 foot-pound. You know, I was using the old torque wrench, but you know, maybe the old torque wrench isn't up to spec, I don't know. One other tip, you know, a lot of guys use a lot of different oils in the 3-hole oil change. My primary, long time ago, I started using just SAE 15W40. It's a heavy-duty diesel motor oil. I've had very, very good success with that. With regards to temperature, it's good. With regards to any slippage, it's good. I change my primary oil a lot more than most. I probably change it about every other oil change as opposed to every 3 oil changes. But so just food for thought there if you've been running around the horn on what to use. I've tried the AMS oil, 20W50 synthetic. I've used Mobile, I've used Harleys, I've used them all. And really, I've had some very good success in the primary using the other oils. So just thought I'd throw that in there. Well, we're at the next stage where it's time to address the push rods. So as I address the push rods, I'm just going to kind of take a quick video. The clips that need to come out, pretty simply, we're going to put a screwdriver in here. And sometimes they're a little corroded, so we're going to have to lift up because there's a spring in these guys. And that's going to enable us to actually take these push rod clips out. So I'll show you one, and ultimately we're going to do all 4 and don't want to belabor it or take too much time. But if I put a screwdriver in, like so, into the clip, I'm pushing up and it just pops out. So I used a little rubber mallet to kind of push up on that. I'll go ahead and do all 4 of these, the front and the back, and then I'll show you the next steps. Be aware that you're going to end up using some of these other pieces or springs in here and such that we'll reuse with regards to the new kit that we put on. Well, we're getting ready to cut the push rods. Bolt cutters work best. Want to take the pressure off of the push rods, and the best way to do that is to get the cylinders on overlap. Is jack up the rear end, okay? So you're going to jack up the rear end so that you can spin the tire. Best to put it in high gear. Of course, the spark plugs are out. But long and short, the reason we want to spin the tires is because we want to see our push rods go up and down. We have the exhaust and we have the intake. Once the exhaust kind of comes around, then we know that essentially we've achieved overlap, and therefore we can cut the front push rods knowing that there should be a little less pressure on them from the springs in the top of the heads and the valves. So we'll cut those. It's important to kind of do that to keep these things from shooting out. You don't want to use a grinder. You want to use the likes of a bolt cutter, because obviously you don't want to get anything in there that is going to cause problems later, metal shavings or whatnot. So I went ahead and cut the front push rods, and I left the nubs inside of there. And the reason being is I wanted to rotate the wheel and make sure that we're getting the pressure off of the back springs. So once these guys are moving up and down, these little tabs I left in there, as you can see, they're kind of moving back and forth, right? So I get them even, and that means that I've taken the pressure off the back springs, so now I can cut the back. Just for review, we did the front first when we had the back actually moving. Now we've just reversed the process. So we know that we're taking the pressure off of the springs in the head that are pushing down on these push rods. So if you are actually going to be reusing your tappets after you take out the rods, you're going to actually use paper clips. This is a nice handy way to actually put it in there. You take one of these suckers, you take off the old clips, and the pressure of the spring would hold the tappets from falling down into the cam area once you take out the old cam plate. So, but the fact is my kit came with tappets, new tappets, so I'm gonna replace them. So I'm not gonna use these. I'm gonna go ahead and discard, the whole concept. I've taken off the tappet block covers, and you'll note that they have one for each side. You really can't screw them up. If you wanted to mark them, you could, but when you go to put them back on, you can see only it's gonna fit one way. and I can't put the back one on the front and vice versa. So no worry there. Here you are your tappets, and they've got this anti-rotation pin you can see on both sides. So to take the tappets out, you want to, remove the pin and take the tappets out. There's my rear anti-rotation. See, the tappets have kind of a flat side to them. So, what that does is it helps keep them from rotating once you actually put the covers back on. Long and short, the tappets are ready to come out. I'm gonna go ahead and just lift these guys out. You can see they're full of oil. You can see the roller on the bottom, and that obviously is going to touch against our can, our lifters, opening our valves and closing them. So I'm on to the next part, and then that's going to be go ahead and take off the cam chest cover. I did lower the jack for the rear tire, so it's now touching the ground, because once I get in here and I start taking out the primary chain or whatever, for the cams, we don't want that to turn. So I'm going to go ahead and just take these suckers out. I've got a little pan underneath here to collect the oil, because I'm sure there's going to be a little oil, even though I did go ahead and empty the oil. Next step we're going to do is go ahead and take off this chain for the primary. I've already cracked it, so that's pretty easy. We are going to use some of the different things, such as spacers and these gears and the chain, of course. The top's 9/16 and the bottom is a 1/2 inch. Each time we take out a little bit of something, we're going to get a little bit of oil drainage. But you can see, keep this stuff because you're going to reuse it again. Take the stuff off. Just gonna go ahead and pull that out. Sure enough, there she is. So set that aside. Note later when we come back, there's some nice little marks that you're gonna want to have together for the timing. Imperative the cams are timed up with the primary shaft. Next step, we're gonna go ahead and take out these guys. As I was saying, these guys in the middle are for the oil pump. So we'll leave those in there, not worry about them, because we won't be using that oil pump or replacing it. So I'm gonna work on basically I got all the bolts out on the outside to pull the chest out. So as I pulled it out, I'm disturbing the oil seal for the oil pump, so a little more oil is coming out. So be prepared for that. Some of the stuff we're gonna reuse relative to these spacers. This one came off of the rear cam. We're going to go ahead and reuse this as well. So when I take this apart, I know that washer will be reused. We'll clean this out. We're going to replace these cam bearings that are these guys. I got a special tool for it, so I'm kind of looking forward to jumping into that. For the main actual oil pump, you've got one back there. We're going to replace some of ththese washers. They all came with the kit, so good to just pry them out with something and know that you're going to replace them. I think in this case, maybe a screwdriver will work. Once these guys are out, new ones come in the kit. You can see they're sticking on there. They're pretty nasty. As I said, this bike's got 70,000 miles on it, and none of this stuff's ever been messed with. So do the work right. So clean the whole chest out. All right, to get the camshaft bearings out, I had to get this special tool. The tool I ordered, it came with 2 different sizes, and we're gonna pop that thing in. You can see at the end it's tapered and it kind of bends. So we'll pop it into the cam bearing, okay, and then once it's in there, we use the expansion tool, and then we'll pull that out utilizing that. The idea is to keep these needles from falling down inside your crankcase. They fall down inside your crankcase, it's a whole new project. You're taking out the whole lower end of the bike, and you really don't want to be doing that. So take your time. So one little note, mine was actually expanded pretty good, the tool. So I went ahead and put this clamp on it to go ahead and close it down. So that being said, it's easier for me to pop this thing through. I didn't want to really force it, so at least I can get it through the bearing, which is good. I'm going to go ahead and put on this measure. We'll just go ahead and push that in, snug it up, and then I'm going to go ahead and pop the rod into this thing with a few taps. feels like it's all the way in. We're just going to use a crescent wrench here. I'll grab another crescent wrench. We'll hold this thing, keep it from twisting. The reason being, I don't want this to twist the needles out inside the crankcase, right? So as I'm doing this, I'm essentially pulling out the camshaft bearing. Getting a little easier to turn, which must mean we're getting closer to our goal. There you have it. One camshaft bearing. Voila. Came out just as it's supposed to. Going to the second one, and hopefully it'll be just as much of a success as the first one, given that we don't have any issues with the bearings or the needles falling out. Tap this in. There she goes. Getting a little easier, so we must be getting close. Boom. With the S&S kit that I'm going to install, I'm pretty excited. It's got a better oil pump, supposedly, and then the bearings themselves that I got on the S&S kit, you can see there's a lot more pins inside of there, so versus the stock, cam bearing. And I'm using the MoFun inner cam bearing installer kit. I found it on Amazon. There weren't a lot of reviews, but I did a lot of research. I was going to send it back because at first I didn't realize that the cam bearing puller had two different sizes in it. In addition to that, it has two different input kind of grommets that we're going to use, and we're going to use the larger one for our installation. We want to make sure that the letters are out, so it's embossed on the outside of that thing. So I'll make sure that that thing's mounted properly. But before doing so, I'm going to use some of the lube. I'm going to put it on the outside. I'm going to put it on the inside. I'll put it in there. I'm just going to go crazy with the lube. I'll mount this thing up and with these pins, and then I'll show you where I'm going to go from there. Gone ahead and lined up my tool, put in the pins, and have the bearing all set up to go in there. So she's lined up and ready to go. I want to feel if there's a lot of back pressure as I'm putting it in. I'm looking underneath here. It looks good. It's going in just fine. The grommet on the end of this thing has a backstop, so it's going to keep me from putting it in too far. If anything, it should have it seat just perfectly. Getting a little harder. I'm getting closer. Overdo it. Up the next bearing and put the tool back on. I'm ready to crank it in. Here we go. Well, there you have it. The bearings are put in. They're all seated properly, and that's good. So time to move on to working on the oil pump and putting in some of these other gaskets and such that we're going to be needing. Well, I'm moving on to put the new chest plate together with the old cams. And in order to do that, there's a few other things we're going to need from the old chest plate. and getting the parts we need. We're going to go ahead and take off this clip. Yep, there you go. So these things should pull out just as soon as I take off this cam tensioner here. So I'll work on that. All right. Change tensioners on the cams. These are notorious for going bad. Boy, these grooves are huge, huge. They're still intact though, which is good. You know, it's evident I've been changing the oil and whatnot, but you know, relative to the wear and where these things are, it wouldn't be too long, and maybe they get up to 100,000 miles on them versus the new ones. You know, obviously they're unscathed. So basically ready to just pop out the old cams, set that aside. I know I'm going to use that washer again, so I'll go ahead and grab that washer off of the chest, set it aside, and know that it's going to go on the front. All right, our cam chain, boom, she's off. And I'm going to move on to putting the new cams into the new chest plate. So I put the cams together in the chain, making sure that I'm keeping these two dots. There's two dots there on each one of the splines. You want to make sure they line up properly because that's everything having to do with the timing, right? So we're gonna put a ton of lube on this thing. And then we're gonna go ahead and slide this over the top of those cams. All right. Feeling good about that. Let's see if we can slide this sucker over here. One popped in and the other. I like it. I like it a lot. All right. So again, I said we were going to reuse this washer. Got a little bit of lube on that as well. Not a problem. We'll go ahead and pop it over there. Just need to attach that spring, a clip washer, and then we're going to go to the other side and worry about chain tensioner. Probably just put a little assembly lube in there. Oh yeah, I think it kind of likes that. Yep, it's working. I like it. I like it a lot. All right, so I'll just put the one screw in here to hold this for now, and then grab the other. Come in with a little bit of blue Loctite. Nice. So we're going to push this guy in, find that hole, get her started, and then I'm going to take the other one out, put blue Loctite on that, pop that in, depress the spring, make sure they're not cross-threaded, everything's solid. I believe spec calls for 100 inch-pounds of torque, so I'll just snug these up a bit, and then I'll come back with the torque wrench, get them to 100 inch-pounds of torque, and we will be ready to go to looking at installing the likes of the oil pump. A couple of things to know. The oil pump from S&S is going to come with a band around it, so we're going to take the band off and we're going to take the oil pump apart, and then we're actually going to put it on the primary shaft one piece at a time. One of the other things that comes with are these rubber gaskets. I pointed out earlier that we're going to be replacing those. The other ones are, you know, essentially dry rot, and you don't want to use them again or you're going to be back in there. So I'll take these out. We're going to put lube on them. I'll show you how everything goes back in. But first we're going to put these gaskets, these rubber gaskets back in. I'm going to use assembly lube and make sure that the oil gasket's put in there properly. It sits in there all the way back in the chamber. So you just want to make sure she's sitting in there and seated. Pushing it in with your finger. I'll just put a little more lube on it. Probably not going to hurt. All right, there's that guy. Next, we're going to put these guys in here. Again, same deal. More lube. Yeah. Oil pump. And relatively speaking, I'm just going to take it apart one piece at a time and put it back in. This is going to sit inside of the area where I put the new gasket. I think it's imperative that we put a little lube on that sucker. Make sure it goes in there just fine. And in the back there, you know, why not put a little lube back there? I'm just okay with that too. And now let's put it in the middle here. Pretty much everywhere, we're lubing this thing up. So that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure we're lined up with the gasket. When I feel good, pushing it in and it's nice and snug. All right. Notice that we got a dowel pin here. That's good. There's one on the other side. So next we got this sleeve. I'm going to lube both sides of this thing up and all the way through the gears and put it on accordingly. There's that side. There's that side. There we go. All right. There you go. We got the next, we got the plate coming, so I'm gonna go ahead and a little more lube on there. Put a little on the shaft. So the plate come off next. A little bit of lube on there. Simple enough. I think I'll take out the other dowel pin and use it to hold the plate in place. Like so. So both dowel pins are in there. A little more lube on that side of the plate. And we're on to the other gears. Okay. Let's put this on. There you go. Let's see if this guy pops out. I can get a little lube on that. There we go. Much better. All right, so there you have it. That's the oil pump. Take a straight edge and take it across the actual block and the oil pump and make sure that the oil pump's not sticking out. If it is, then that means that it hasn't seated properly in that one O-ring we had. So just a little checks and balance there. Onto the actual camshafts. I'm going to use a little bit of lube on the cams themselves before I put that in there. Plenty of lube on it. Roll it around. Time to slide this sucker on. Voila. It's in. So one thing that I like about this cam chest is that it has numbers on it. 1, 2, 3, or so on. I'm going to use the factory bolts, put them in here in that order. We'll just snug them up, and then we're going to torque them down. I've yet to put the bolts in the oil pump. I might just go ahead and hand put those in, but 1 and 2 would be important. One thing I did do is I jacked up the bike again so that I may rotate the rear tire in high gear, helping to align the oil pump with the main shaft. So very important when you put these bolts in to do that, just to make sure that everything's in order. So, okay, well, now that I've got the plate on, I've got all my screws in with blue Loctite. Everything's kind of, just slightly hand tight. I did go ahead and just put these in by hand to get them started on the oil pump. It's very important that the oil pump centered on the shaft. I jacked this thing up. I'm going to rotate it as I kind of go around just to make sure that this thing's tightened up. 100 inch-pounds of pressure. Sweet, we're good there. Now we want to hand tighten the oil pump. We're going to go with 1 and 2. Just rotating that primary shaft. Like it. And we'll do in the same order, torquing them down to 100 inch-pounds. Once I finish this, I'm going to go around, make sure everything's torqued right, and I'll move on to putting on the chain and the gears. I threw on the actual chain drives here. I've lined up the dots and I've tightened them pretty snug. The idea behind it is we want to actually measure 10 thousandths is important. It's a measurement of really making sure that our chain doesn't get whopper jawed. But I'm using a straight edge along the 2 pulleys, and as I hold that on there, I want to slide this underneath here. If it doesn't slide underneath there, boy, that's excellent, right? That's a good thing. If it did and it were more than 10 thousandths, then that would be a problem, and we'd have to go back and change that spacer in the back. So good to keep in mind. They do have other Harley parts, of course, that you can get for spacers behind there. So if need be, fire it up and do that. New chain tensioner out, supplied bolts from the kit. They're at 100 inch-pounds torque. I use blue Loctite on those. I've got this little tool here to lock these 2 dots, make sure that they're aligned properly, and I put the chain on. And these are just kind of hand tightened. The lower one is going to be 25 foot-pounds torque, and then the top's going to be 35 foot-pounds torque using red Loctite. So red Loctite's in there, they're hand tight. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Then I'm going to throw on the cover using the supplied gasket and then tighten these up. Stage 2 complete. Got the cam cover back on. Everything's torqued down, 100 inch-pounds of torque, and it's got a specific torque pattern to it. Refer to your manual on that, but once they're all in, I mean, essentially you're working across, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. So it's pretty easy. You just want to make sure that you're getting the gasket on so that it's flat, flush, and you're not going to have any leaks. Once you're finished, go ahead and just tighten them all down around the outside. Boom, you're good. We're ready to tackle the jugs. And in order to get the new jugs on, we got to take the old jugs off, right? So the first step we're going to do is going to jump in on these rocker box covers. Pretty simple. You're talking 7/16, just pulling you in for a little close up here. There's 3 on the outside of each, cylinder head. Always best practice to do the corners before you come back to the middle, but this side's a little harder with regards to that. This one in particular, it's kind of a booger. So long and short, you can use an Allen wrench or a 3/8 inch socket. Getting my Allen in there was the ticket. So I cracked them all loose. I'm gonna go ahead and take them off, pop these things off. Once these nuts are out, we're gonna, basically if you wrap them with a rubber mallet, they'll come by, or even the palm of your hand. We'll take those off, and then we'll work on pulling the likes of the rocker boxes. So, all right, well, got the rocker box head covers off, so you can see on both sides. It's pretty simple. We took the bolts out like I showed you. Gonna need to replace these gaskets, of course, so make sure you order that. Did not come with the S&S kit, but next we're gonna take out this rocker box support. It's basically 2 actual nuts here. I think they're 3/8, and then there's 4 1/2 inch. That would be here, and then here, and then this whole assembly will lift off. So we'll do that on the front, do that on the back, and then that's going to expose the likes of the bolts that we can actually take off the rocker box on the actual head. That's this lower portion rather. Once that's out of the way, well, then we're working on the head. And we got this one here by the back. That one popped out too, so here we go. It's nice to get them from the right side of the bike because of the way these heads are, at least on this Ultra. They're tapered off, at this steel here, or at least the rocker boxes rather. So it makes accessing this stuff pretty easy on this side. So next, we've got, I guess, 6 bolts here. 1, 2, 1 in the corner, and then the same in the back. 1, 2, 3. So on both the front and the back, got to take these out, and then we'll be able to take off the actual rocker boxes, and then we should be able to have access to the head bolts. So getting to it, one step. Well, it took me a little while to get these bolts out. You had to get pretty creative with some of the wrenches back there and whatnot, but I was able to do it. So I'm ready to go ahead and knock these things loose, and they should come out. There you go. That's that one. And voila. So let's take off the front motor mount. It was up here, and it was mounted to this actual jug, actually on the head. It had a couple of bolts in there, and it really made my life a lot easier with regards to taking off the corner bolt on the rocker boxes. So, it's inevitable. You're going to take that off, so I might as well do it, and I did. I think it was a 9/16 wrench. Just a couple of bolts here, and it came out. Good to go. So, we're replacing everything. There you have it. Pull off the jugs, the old jugs, so we can move on to the next step and get the other one off. Already loosen them up a bit. Wrap on the deal with the rubber mallet. There's a little clip in here, so easy enough. I got this little pick here. I'm just gonna pop it in. There it goes. All right, easy enough. Just kind of a little half-hook pin, okay? So that's going in there. And to get the actual piston pin out, essentially we're gonna have to force this pin through. There's another one of these hooks or clips on the other side, so I'll go ahead and do both sides. And then that ought to make that thing come out pretty easy, is at least my thought process on it. There's the back one. I'll roll around to the other side, take those clips out, and then work on getting the 15/16 socket on there with duct tape on the C-clamp, and then just use this adapter on the other side of that piston. Put it in the hole, lined it up, and then I tightened it down, and sure enough, it was able to move the actual piston pin, so at least it loosened it up, and then I was able to actually slide it out. So it's that time to take the pistons and get the rings on it and set the ring gaps. You know, relative to the pistons, it's pretty easy to identify, at least on these. The intake's going to have a little bit bigger valve opening. I did take the heads down to Lee's Performance there in Carver, Minnesota. At least done over 1,000 bikes, tons of great references. So he's going to port the heads. Going to put a little bit bigger intake in there, so we're going to be set. With regards to the rings, I've identified, you know, which rings go where and whatnot, and I kind of got things set up here. So let me show you that. We have the first ring. I've gone ahead and oiled them a bit, and I wrote down my settings on my cardboard here. So that's 0.025 with my gap setting, and then 0.033 is what I'm shooting for. And then the oil rings that are going to go on each side of the expanding gasket are going to, you know, I'm going to shoot for 0.015. With regards to the cylinder, you know, I'm going to go ahead and measure up and grind my rings and do whatever I need to do. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to wash the lights of the cylinder out with Dawn detergent and oil things up. Concerning the grinding, let me take you over to this side. I've set up a little ordeal. I got a grinder, and you know, I'm going to set up my drill here to rotate the grinder rather than do it by hand. So it's going to be kind of automatic, but this is what we're going to use to grind the rings to the actual spec and go from there. Once I get all that done, then, you know, it's a matter of installing the jugs and putting the pistons in. So I'll work on that a bit and check in. Here's my process. Here's the top ring. I'm going to go ahead and gingerly, very delicately slide it inside the cylinder, right? And as I put it in cylinder, I'm going to use the piston. I put both pins on each side to keep it from dropping all the way in. But I'll use it to push it down, make sure everything's kind of flat, because I want that ring to be in there as square as possible when I go to measure it. I said I'm shooting for 0.025, and right now the spec is 0.24 to 0.26, so I'm trying to split that in the middle. I start out with 0.24. I like it. That's going right in. Let's go to 0.25, see if I can get that one in there. Try and move my hand out of the way so you can see what I'm doing here. 0.25 goes in, so the top ring's the spec, just right out of the bag. I'm digging that for sure. We'll move on to the next ring. Set this guy aside. No, I don't have to grind it. I'm not real excited about having to grind any of them if I don't have to. The second ring shows a spec, at least on my kit, the 4-inch Big Bore Kit, of 0.032 to 0.035. I figured let's go in the middle, 0.033. We'll pop this guy in here. Delicately, you know, I'm trying not to scratch anything, right? This ring's a little more stout. Alright. Put this guy in, use the piston. Solid, digging it. And then I said 0.33. But let's see if 0.32 works right out of the gate. Oh, solid. I like it. That's right on spec. Right out of the bag. So I don't have to grind either one of the first two rings. Woohoo! Happy about that. I'll take these guys out, set them aside. I think the the oil rings that go around the actual oil spring here or whatever. Put these guys in. I think they're intended to be a little different spec. Let me check and double check that spec. Yeah, 0.015 according to the instructions. 0.015, good. That one's good. Let's check the last one. Use the piston. It's in there. Golden. All right, well, good news is out of the first packet in the first cylinder, I don't have to actually grind any of the rings. So I'm appreciating that. I'm gonna do the second cylinder and keep whatever rings are with each cylinder and each piston. So this piston and these rings I'll set aside, and then I'll plan on cleaning those. I've got the wash tub filled with Dawn. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Then I'll come back, do a little brake cleaner, do a little oil, get these cylinders all ready to go, and get this camera set up for the next phase. All right, good news. Went through the rear cylinder and put all the rings in, and likewise out of the bag, they are all to spec, so I don't have to grind any rings. All right, took a bit of wrestling, but finally got that clip in. So there it is, it popped. I heard that, that's good. So the piston's in, woohoo, great. Here's my oil expander ring. It's imperative that these guys face up. We'll make sure it's butting up against each other, not overlapping. Make sure it's facing this way, because we kind of want to be able to see that when we go to mount that in, and make sure that spring doesn't pop and have them overlap, because we want to have a butting. So next, we're gonna go with the likes of the top and the bottom of those rings. All right, easy enough. Let's put it on. Face it towards the back. It's gonna be on the bottom. We're working from the bottom up. Nice. Tomorrow today. All right, I like it. Good. And then we'll go with the top one. Top one we're gonna face forward since the back one's facing back. Fair enough. And we'll just make sure those are all adjusted before we actually put on the jugs. They're gonna rotate around over time, that's for sure. So, nice. All right, so those are all in. And we're going to go with the one labeled top. This one happens to say M in the kit. And with regards to that, that's the second one down, right? And the second ring gap should be facing the exhaust, which is in the back, and they want it over here. So, and there we go. I like it. Can't be wrong. All right, there's the second one. Boom. And then let's go with the top one. The top one, top oil ring. They want to face the intake. That way it's cooler gases, right? So I'll put it on the intake, and then it's going to be on this side. So there's that. There you have it. So I'm going to make sure that these are all aligned properly on the piston. Then I'll put some assembly lube on them. I'll get the collar for the piston ring collar on there, and then we're gonna go ahead and put our jugs on. One thing to note, we got a little replacement gasket that's gonna go on here for the oil, and then on the bottom of the jug we'll have a rubber grommet for that. So I'll show you. I'm ready to put the piston into the jug and put the jug on. So I've got my my ring holder on here for the piston ring holder. I had to kind of fabricate one from the hardware. Evidently the one I got didn't detach, so I couldn't, it was more for a car. So any event, I've put lube on everything. Time to take off my hoses. I might as well put them over on the other side. Since I got the piston protected. The jug, again, it has a rubber ring. I went ahead and put that on. The O-ring I was referring to before on the oil return goes there. All right, so I'm gonna try and slip this guy on and see if we can get her done here. I've got the motor on top dead center so that the piston is kind of sitting up. Oh yeah. All right. We got it over the actual piston rings. So beautiful thing. Well, I got the clamp off on the piston rings. I'm sliding it over the jugs, got the towel out. Made sure my gasket was on here. You know, God forbid had that thing fallen off. That would have been a real drag. And of course, I'm just sliding it over. And right at home. Boom. Woohoo! Pretty exciting stuff right there. Found a little easier way than that 7/8" wrench. Just like when I took them out, this little cutout here in the piston, when you pop them out, you're gonna use like a little jeweler's screwdriver, and you're gonna pop those wrist pin clips out. I used this as a fulcrum, and it popped in pretty easily, so I was kind of digging that. Just thought I'd share that. Took me a little while to wrestle with it, but sorry I didn't videotape it, but at least you know the tip. All right. We got her in there. At least the piston rings and whatnot are settled, and we're all good. So I took the clamp off and made sure my little return ring in the corner back here is seated properly. Make sure this is seated properly, and now we're gonna go ahead and put the jug on down on the cylinder. Or rather, put the piston over the cylinder. Ease it into the hole. Got the motor, the block. Woo. There we go. And we are ready. We are ready for the heads. Well, I got the heads back. Lee's Performance Sports in Carver, Minnesota did them for me. Look at these beauties. Did a nice job. Cleaned them all out, put new springs on, ported them. The intake side's got a bigger valve in it. You can see that. Whatever, I'm excited. So I'm gonna go ahead and install the new heads today. Well, we're all set up, ready to put on the head. I've gone ahead and put my gasket on. My dowel pins are set up. Everything's copacetic there. The gasket can go on either way, front or back, doesn't matter. I took my old bolts, of course. The shorter ones are on one side, and the longer ones on the other. Shorter ones are going to be on the side of the spark plug. But I got my head in order. I'm going to line it up to those dowel pins and put it on, and then we'll go ahead and tighten these suckers up. Just like a glove. I like it. All right, so there's an order to put these pins in, and I also put assembly lube on the bolts, and I'll show you that in a second. Reason being, you don't want any friction when you're actually torquing these things down. So I put a little bit on the inside and a little bit on the lip. And the order is actually intended to do a pattern. You always start on the primary side. That's why I'm standing on this side of the bike. And with regards to that pattern, we're trying to squish down the gasket appropriately on the head so that everything's doing even, Steven, right? So that sequence, basically we tighten these by hand, and we're gonna come back and we're gonna torque them down to spec of 10 to 12 foot-pounds. So always check your specs in your manual. We do that, and then we're gonna come back and do the same sequence on 15 to 17 foot-pounds. Then we're gonna undo them, tighten them again, all in the same order. And that ought to have everything all sealed up. So now that I've got these guys down, I'm probably gonna need an extension here, so give me a minute. Got the extension. Going with the lower one on the primary first, then the next primary. I'm just kind of snugging them a little bit, nothing big. I'll come back with the torque wrench after I snug them a little bit. All right, now I'm gonna come back with the torque wrench, and I got it set on 12 foot-pounds. We'll start with the guy out here. Twelve. 12. Just gonna do it from this angle. All right, it's all at 12. Now I'm gonna bump it up to 17. And I'll do the same order, here, 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 here. Then we'll loosen them, and then we're gonna come back, redo it, and then after we get them to 17 foot-pounds, then we just do a quarter turn on each bolt in the same order, and the head will be on, and we'll move on to the next one. So I'll go ahead and take care of that, and then we'll talk about the next steps. So I came back and I torqued everything back down a second time, and now I'm just gonna do 90 degrees or a quarter turn. So that's pretty simple. Start in the same order. Here's the first one. I'm gonna go ahead and come on around. And that sucker's tight. I don't want to overdo it. Perfect. Okay, just a little bit more. Okay. Everything to spec. All right, so there you go. That head's on. Loving it. I'm gonna put the next one on. I kind of dig the fact that I did a little different color here. I don't know, you know, it's different, it's unique. That's what I'm kind of chasing. I like it, it's different. It's my bike. All right, man. I'm working on the rocker boxes, and I did a little research, and I got a rocker box kit. So I'm just gonna show you a couple of things that I learned, and also I did look up some specs that I'm going to use on this rocker box. So let me see if I can get that thing on video here, and I'll show you a second. So I've got the rocker box here, of course, and you know, I went ahead and replaced this excuse me, O-ring. It's important. This is a breather kit. This is the old one. You can see it's nasty. You know, this is all corroded and it's falling apart. So it's really good I got in there. I got a new kit. It basically, this guy's gonna mount, you know, your rocker box right there, right? And here's the new kit. So significantly better, cleaned it all out, you know, and put this guy in there. The specs, here's the specs. We have the rocker covers, right? These guys are gonna torque down at 15 to 18 foot-pounds, okay? Then we have the lift cover, which, you know, is let's see, we got the rocker arms, okay, let's go with that. Rocker arms, these are 18 to 22 foot-pounds. I've heard of guys breaking these, so just be aware, you know, if your gut feeling says, hey, it's tight enough, so be it. The breather, that's going to be these little bolts that go in here. These guys are going to be 120 to 156 inch pounds on those. all right? And the actual plate, okay, that's these outside guys, these guys, they're going to be 120 to 168 inch-pounds as well. So, any event, hopefully that helps. I'm gonna, finish cleaning this up and go ahead and throw it on the bike, and I'll film that. All right, can't imagine anybody coming this far and not replacing the gasket. So make sure you get a new gasket, clean off the bottom of your rocker box, and put it all in. I've got everything together because it's so tight on this particular motor. I'm all covered with a little blue Loctite. So I plan to kind of finagle this thing in here and hand tighten them. So I've got everything torqued to spec. My rocker box, everything's back on. Of course, I got to put the plate on. And before I put the plate on, when I got these heads done, I got bigger valves, right? So I just want to check and make sure that none of the rockers are going to hit the top of these fins inside this plate. So I've taken a little bit of clay, it's actually plumber's putty, and put it on there. And I'm going to just kind of check and see what that tolerance is, because the last thing I want is that sucker wrapping and tapping on the top of my box. So if need be, I'll grind down this fin, but let's just see how close it is as I put this guy on. Oh, actually, I got it on the wrong corner. All right, give me a minute. Thought it was so slick. All right, it's this corner. We're gonna check it out. I put it on without the gasket, right? And that way I can see how thin it is. And so with regards to that impression right there, right, I can see how close that particular intake valve's going to be. I'm probably okay with 585 cams, but I might just grind a little bit of this guy on this corner down, just a wee bit, just in case, So that's kind of my plan. I'll get back to it right after this. Well, I went ahead and grinded that down, that corner. I just feel better about that. I made just a little bit more clearance. So I've been reading in different forums that seems to make sense. If I'm ever going to go with even higher performance cams in this thing, I don't want to have to go back into the rocker box. So I made a little bit of room. Any event, got my new gasket on. I'm going to pop this cover on, throw the bolts in, torque it to spec, and we will be done. So give me a second. And there you have it. We got the rocker box cover back on, and we're on to the next one. So digging it, very happy. Until then, got the second rocker box on all together. Just need to torque it down to spec. And then on to putting the throttle body back on, putting the tappets in, and the push rods. So that'll be next. So I'm putting together the push rod setup, and I got to take some of the old stuff off the old guy to use. So we're going to basically use the likes of, it's the old guy, right? We're getting rid of it. We're going to need that little washer. Set that aside. I'll clean these up with a little WD-40, but essentially you're going to use that cap, you're going to use that washer, and that spring. And how it's going to go together, pretty simple, same way it came apart. And then we also will use out of the S&S kit, the middle washer. You can see we've got a couple. These are the big ones, the smaller ones. That's the top, that's the bottom, and there's the one that's going to go on the actual push rod cover. So I'll finish that up, and then I'm going to put the tappets in. You can see I've got them soaked in oil. They've been soaking for a while. So we'll address that and go from there. Time to put on the tappet blocks and put the tappets in. With regards to the tappets, big deal here, have that little hole facing the inside of the motor. So I'll take out the pin, I'll pump those suckers in, and then we're going to go ahead and put the blocks on. So pins out. First tappet's going in. Full space in the right spot. Of course, I had my tappets all soaked in oil get all the air bubbles out so that when they bleed out properly, right? Plop the pin in. Everything's square. Sweet, I like it. Now we're gonna put on the blocks. So with regards to that, I just put a little thin coat of oil on my gasket. Gasket's good. We'll pop that on, put the screws in, torque everything down. I'll double check the spec, but I believe it's 100 inch-pounds of torque. I'm gonna come back and put a little blue Loctite on these guys too. And then we'll work on the push rods. With regards to the process of putting in these push rods, I'm gonna take the old clips and make sure I'm on top dead center. So I'm just gonna sit them on top of the tappets, okay, one on each side. And then of course I got the bike in high gear. And what I'm looking for is to make sure that on the cams, we're at our lowest setting. So you see that one rising up? I'm gonna bring it back down. The other one will rise up. I'm gonna bring it back down. I saw the one bump, which means I'm off the easy start of the cam. So I'll go ahead and pull these out, save them for the front. Rods in there. Fully collapse them down. You can see we're gonna put these guys in, but this guy's gonna go in that way. He's gonna go in the back. So it's back to the front and then front to the back for intake and whatnot. So I'll collapse my rods and then go ahead and start working those in. All right, so I got everything in order here. I've taken the Sharpie and and check them out. Well, I've waited 15 minutes. I've come back. I can turn these pretty easily by hand. So they're good. We're on to the front. I'll finish those up. Go ahead and release these guys and pop in the top caps and whatnot and get it all taken care of. So there you have it. I threw the other push rods in and pretty much completed the motor work. Now it's just time to throw the throttle body on and put the whole bike back together and see if she starts up. And we're ready to rumble. Break it in and take it to the dyno. So I'll bring you back when I'm ready to fire that thing up. All right, man, we're ready for startup and break in. Took the spark plugs out, disconnected the fuel, and we're gonna turn it over and hopefully we don't hear any big knocks. My buddy Neil came back. So we'll do this just to get the oil pressure up, maybe a couple of turns on the motor, and we'll know that that oil pressure's in the oil pump and up in the rods and whatever. And then we'll throw in the plug. So. Short, quick burst. Sounds pretty good. Kind of like it. Sounds smooth. Oh yeah, she wants to go. She's ready to fire. I think I'm gonna throw the plugs in it, and we're gonna fire that sucker up, so give me a minute. All right, in all transparency, my buddy Neil realized I didn't have my little cable plugged in down here on the throttle body, so here we go, man. Let's fire this hog up. Yeah! Yeah! All right, we gotta let it run for a minute. Put a bunch of WD-40 on everything, so it's all kind of burning off the stuff, but we're letting her burn for a minute. I cleaned the shit out of it with WD, man. All right, we're going for the second warm-up, 3 minutes on this one. So we'll get back to you. Everything's looking good.